Good. Yeah. Comment, please.
Johannes, good to see you. Injuries, let's start there. Are there sort of any, hopefully no fresh ones? Are there any fresh ones to report?
No fresh ones. But also no new ones coming back. So we will be the same group of players we travel to Leeds with.
And in terms of just one, I wanted to clarify, Forson. Have you got sort of a timeline roughly in terms of how?
No, because it's about when he can manage the pain, and when it settles a little bit, it's been swollen. So it's been difficult for him just to stretch the leg and just to walk actually. So before he can walk, he cannot be in the training. So it's an injury where we just have to wait and see. Sometimes it can be within a couple of days. Sometimes it can be a couple of weeks. So we just need to wait and see.
And in terms of obviously the group that you do have available, it is a small number. We saw that on Saturday, and the numbers that you're having to bring in terms of the youth team. Does it put more stress on those players, the fact that it is a small group and you're going to have to rely on them again? We kind of saw this in November when you were in a similar situation and you had the Cardiff game, the Wednesday game. Those energy levels can be difficult to maintain. Yeah,
of course. It's more difficult for us to rotate. We have to more or less bring the same group of players to another game, and what we saw last time is that can, if we are unlucky, it can give us more injuries because we kind of load some of the ones a little bit too much, a little bit too heavy. So we kind of just cross our fingers and hope for the best in this particular moment. But on the good side is that more of the injuries players, they will come back within a couple of weeks. So it's about us surviving a little bit for the next 2-3 games and make sure that we get through them without too many injuries, or at least do everything we can to get through them without too many injuries. But some of the players, they have to play a lot. That's a part of the game. That's how it is. But fortunately for us, some of the players that have to play a lot are also the ones that have tried it before. So Shane Duffy can normally play a 3-game week. Kenny can normally play a 3-game week. So we have some players. Jack Stacey can play a 3-game week. So they've tried it before, and those are the ones that need to take probably a little bit extra responsibility in those days. Yeah.
And as a coach, when you're in a situation like this, obviously you don't want to completely change what you want to do, and you've spoken about that before in terms of building it up, but do you have to tweak slightly the way you want to play? Because it is quite an intense style of play that you're trying to play. It does require a lot of energy, but when you've got a small squad and there's the risk of injuries, do you have to think about that and think about asking those players to do that in the circumstances? Yeah,
there's many ways to look at it. I think, of course, we look at, and we have done that also when we have more players available actually, where should we adjust a little bit in our high pressing? Can we sometimes go into a lower block a little bit earlier, and also some more situations in the game? I think one of them where we can make sure that we can dominate the game and also don't use too much energy is for us to be even better on the ball, because that's the moments also to take in a game, to make sure that we can control it, we can do some passes, we can slow it down once in a while, and that's also a moment for us to make sure that we don't get up and have too big numbers in too many players and for too much of the time in game. So we work on the same things, because it's also an opportunity for us to start working with some of the next ones, as we saw on the positive side in Sheffield United the other day was the debut to Lucian, the debut to Elliot, and those are the ones where now they get to train every day on the things that we do, and they have to learn it, they have to understand it, they have to be a part of it, and that's probably a good thing. Of course, are we as competitive as we want to be? Probably not in this moment, but it's just the fact that it's where we are.
In terms of Sheffield United, I know you spoke about it post-game, but particularly from the attacking perspective, because there's obviously been a lot of people speaking about the shots on target number. I know you sort of said after the game it's not your favourite way to sort of look at it. It did feel like your team got into some pretty good areas. It was 20 crosses and quite a few set pieces. Yeah. So is it a decision-making thing, a quality point for you, rather than perhaps looking at the shots on target, the expected goals number, and sort of drawing any big conclusions?
Yeah, it is, because I actually think we took 2 or 3 decisions outside the box to shoot where I think it was the wrong decision, and it could have been an easy save for the keeper, but then it would have counted as a shot on target, and probably more would have said, okay, you at least had 1 shot on target. But it's not important for me. I've heard other coaches in this league talk about it's important to have a lot of shots on target. It's not important for us. It's not important the way that we play. It's important for us to get into the areas of the first and foremost the penalty box, where the chance of scoring goals are are even higher, are even bigger. So that's how we look at it offensively. That's decision making, collective movements, making each other look good up front. And then of course when we have certain players, it's difficult not to mention Borja Sainz, where he's a threat from distance. So of course we should not tell him not to shoot when he's in a good position outside the box. But there's also, without mentioning too many names, players where I will say, please don't shoot when you're outside the box. And that's also a learning perspective from players, and they have to find out what's best for them. But the way we approach it is that we want to create as big chances as possible.
What's the balance that you try to create as a coach between the final third and how structured that play needs to be compared to perhaps some of the freedom? Because clearly you don't want to contain all of that, and you want players to express themselves and try and make things happen.
Yeah.
There clearly does need to be a structure to it as well. So is that a difficult balance to try and strike?
It is, because it's the hardest part in football, is to score goals and to create chances. So that is naturally some of the most difficult moments in football to train and to prepare. But I think without praising myself too much, because it's not what I'm about to say here, but I think the way we do it is the right way, where we look at the players and we look at their abilities, what they can do, and then we try to create moments for them in the game that is the same over and over again. So the game doesn't become random for us, but it becomes a game where they can recognize situations. Just like, go back and see Borja Sainz goals. I will not take the credit for his finishing quality. That's purely down to him. But the way that we have managed to put him in the exact same situation over and over again, that comes down to the collective part. That comes down to the movements of other players to open that space for him so he can show how good a football player he is. And it's the same with some of the other goals that we have scored this season that actually look a little bit like against some of the other goals, because it's the same situations we arrive in. It's the same decisions we have to take, and we can purely work on timing and movements and finishing quality with the individuals. And that's how we look at it. And then of course there will always be a difference whether we play with Jack Stacey on the last line as a wide player, or we play with a Oscar Schwartau, or we play with a Luis Dobbin or Onel Hernandez. There will always be differences, and then of course that's the preparation for us coaches to find out how can the player be at his best in this position. What kind of movements do we need to make him look best? And that's what we try to do.
Another aspect I wanted to ask you about is playing out from the back, because clearly it's one that seems to get highlighted maybe when there's mistakes and people look at it and they perhaps question why it is done and why maybe there aren't balls clipped into channel which are a little bit more sort of percentage based. Can you explain, because clearly every decision you take as a coach is weighing up risk and reward, and there is a reward to playing out from the back. So from your perspective as a coach, what is it that makes you think that playing out from the back, there's a bigger reward to doing that than maybe the risk involved in it?
Do you like playing out from the back?
If you want my opinion, I'd rather see that than a long ball, yeah.
I think that's the first question. You have to find out as an individual. Do you prefer it or not? What kind of game do you want? And that's also as a coach, when you start, you have to take some decisions. You have to make it clear for yourself and then for the players, what kind of game do you want to play? And then find out what kind of scenarios and situations in the game that you want to play happen, and then take out those situations and train them and make sure that everyone is aware what to do in those exact situations. I believe that from my perspective, I don't want a random game. I don't want a 50-50 game. So the way that we see it, also the coaching staff, is that we want to avoid duels in the game. We want to avoid situations where it's down to a 50-50 duel. And that is, of course, if we go direct on a goal kick. We cannot control where the ball will drop down. We can control in what space it will end, but we cannot control what will be the outcome of it, because it will be a duel, it will be a second ball, it will be a third ball, it will be that kind of situation. And that's an open game, but also more random, and also a game where it's difficult to get the control. And we want the control, and we always see that the game starts with us being on the ball and trying to dominate. Then, of course, we train the decision making in it. Sometimes we have to go direct. Sometimes, if we're really under pressure or the opposition invest a lot of players in pressing us, then probably there is a really good situation on the last line or even in behind them, and we should seek that one. But the original thoughts is that we want a game that we can control, and we want a game with less duels, and we want a game that is less random and for us to control. That's the reason why we do it. And then, of course, because it is a difficult thing to do, and it takes a lot of training, it takes a lot of preparation, it takes a lot of courage and personality as a player to do it. And tomorrow I expect them to do it at Ellen Road. But I'll not change that approach, because I expect it from them. And if we don't succeed, and we have to get better. But I can also, I just highlighted for the players today that this is how we're going to do it. We will not be stupid. So in a game, if we don't succeed a couple of times, we have other approaches. We can do different things to see if we can open up in another way. But it's a big part of us scoring goals. And the emotions just straight after a mistake from Shane Duffy and us conceding a goal and not defending that one well enough is to say, okay, we don't do it. But then we open up for a game after that is completely out of our hands. That is not the way we want to approach it. And I just highlighted for the players this morning, we're the team in the league who has scored the most goals from build-ups from the back. And we've actually scored close to 25% of our goals starting with build-up from the back. And we've conceded 3. So in what world, and if it's just a football club or even a company, in what company will directors say, okay, our revenue comes from 20% of it comes from this part, but because we made a mistake the other day, we should not do it anymore? That will not be the fact. No places. So we are down to, analyzing the situations, making sure that we can get any better, and probably there will be a mistake tomorrow again. Hopefully we will not concede a goal from it, and probably there will be a mistake on Saturday, and probably there will be a mistake the game after that. But it's also the first way for us to start creating chances, and we are one of the teams that create the most chances, score the most goals from that.
Yeah, and obviously it gets highlighted when there are those mistakes, but those mistakes are important for the future as well. You mentioned it's about putting players in a position where they can kind of see the picture and they're familiar with it. So do you often find that players, after they do make a mistake, clearly, which is bad and often may lead to a goal, but actually it can help them in a way because it can show them what not to do?
I always tell them that the first thing I look at when there's a mistake, whether it's a striker missing a big chance, or it's a centre back doing a passing mistake, or it's a goalkeeper making a mistake, I always tell them, I look at their behaviour 5 minutes after. I always look at them. I look at how they react to that. I look at how they respond to that, because the only thing you can do, and the only thing that is the right thing to do, is to commit to the next action in the game. That's how football is. And I try again to find as much inspiration as possible. I think one of the best persons who have ever described this is actually Roger Federer in a speech for, I don't know when it's from, where he speaks about this being a tennis player in a game where there's so many mistakes. And he's counted that I think he won 52% of all balls in play in his tennis career. That's a lot of play that he didn't win. But how do you accept that and move on to the next part? It's the same as a football player. The game is constantly with mistakes, whether it's touches or passes or mistaken decisions or whatever. But how do you deal with that and move on to the next one? How do you learn from it also in the game and make sure you do a little bit better? That's the very, very interesting part, and also interesting part for a young squad, but also why we are so passionate about working with football, because you can see the improvement. You can see that we get better and better, and you can see that sometimes there's downs, and how do we respond to that as a group. That's interesting, and that's something we definitely work a lot on.
In terms of improvement, I sort of wanted to ask you about one player in particular, Angus Gunn. Clearly a very good performance at the weekend, some very important saves. I know you mentioned that. It's maybe been a little bit of a tough year for him, maybe not one of his better seasons compared to what he has had previously. Where do you kind of feel he's at the moment? Are you kind of seeing that improvement, and that probably leads into the conversation about as much with the ball at his feet, maybe compared to some of that shot stopping ability as well?
Yeah, I think of course the save just before halftime was very important for us, because it could have changed the whole approach for second half. I think he could have done better on the first goal that we conceded. So that's how it is, and there's a lot of things for us also starting with the goalkeeper. There's probably also a lot more responsibility on a goalkeeper position in the way that we play compared to what he have tried before in his career. Again, I hope, and that's also what I see from him, that he's committed and he's also eager to learn and take the next steps in his career. I think what we have tried to say, and what I say a lot, is that it's never down to age. It's about personality and how eager you are to learn. And if you want that, then we can easily build on the next steps and the next steps. And I think he have taken some big steps in terms of being more comfortable on the ball, in terms of sometimes not just doing the easy passes, but wait for the opposition to step up a little bit more and then do passes where he can go in between them. I think his more direct play is getting better as well. So I think there's improvement, definitely.
And obviously, in terms of him, there is a contractual situation. I know I've asked you about it previously, and I think you described it as kind of a top priority. Where are we with it? Is it one where clearly there's a window going on, so that's probably difficult to have contract discussions in that. But is it one that you would expect to sort of pick up pace after January?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think it's also fair to recognise that he's out of contract this summer, so there's probably interest from other clubs than just us, and we have to find the best situation. Now, of course, we want to sit down with him and agents, and I know that Ben is doing that already now. But it's not always just to say, okay, here's a new contract, sign it. Okay, let's get out there and train. Sometimes there's bigger decisions. Sometimes there's more thinking about it, and that's just how it is, and how it is with all the players in the building. So. Like always, I'm more than happy to announce if there's any news as soon as we have it.
Yeah, and clearly, like you say, there's lots of elements to this, but purely on a footballing perspective, if the opportunity was there to continue work with him, you would like that. You would like to sort of take him forward.
I think he's a good goalkeeper, and we always want a good goalkeeper in the building.
Cool. Let's move on to tomorrow night then. Leeds. Is there a tougher test at the moment in Championship football than Helen Road and facing this Leeds team? I think Danny Royle at the weekend described them as the best team in the league. And they
are. So again, when we have an analytical approach, we look at the stats, we look at all the things that happens in the games, and we can see that we are quite up there, especially on all the offensive stats. We are when we just look at the overall stats, close to being a top team, and also close to reach the numbers that is required to be a team that can fight for promotion. We can see in some of the defensive stats we're not good enough. We've made improvement over the last 8 to 12 games probably, but the start of the season was not good enough. The mid block of the season was not good enough defensively. That's probably the reason why we are where we are at the moment. But if we look at Leeds, they are probably up there on the offensive stats, but also up there on the defensive stats, and that's the reason why they are top of the table. So it's fair to say that they are probably the toughest test for us at the moment. But that's also what makes it exciting.
And is it one of those evenings where, from your perspective, you're really obviously mapped out the injury situation? You've spoken a lot about maybe where you need to improve from an attacking perspective. Is it one of those nights where everything needs to come together to sort of favour you because of obviously your situation and where you're at the moment? Yeah,
it's fair to say. I think, and you can probably say whatever you want to say about that, but I think we can beat everyone in the league, and I think we can go to Leeds tomorrow night and win. That's also the motivation I have to bring into the players. But when I saw them this morning and we spoke about how we prepare for the game and what our plan is, I feel the same. I see the same in their eyes, that they definitely think that we can go to Leeds and to win it. Do we know it's going to be difficult? Yeah, of course we know, because we can just look at the standings, we can just look at the games that they have played, but we definitely believe in it. But it's an exciting test where we are at the moment. Of course, it could have been interesting to see if we had everyone available, how good we can go to Leeds and perform. Now we are where we are, and it's also going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see who can take that responsibility in the game that is needed. Are there any ones who will take the next step in their career here in Norwich and probably make it even more clear that they should be a starter in the future? Are there someone coming on in second half that will make an impact to the game? So all these small stories in the game. Then of course we do everything we can to win and get a good result, because I definitely think we can. But there's also so many other stories in it, just like there was in Sheffield United the other day.
Yeah, and of course, we've mapped out maybe why it's going to be difficult for your team. But does that give a freedom that can help you? The fact that probably outside of where you're at, there aren't going to be many people probably predicting you guys to get a result here. So does that help you?
No, I hate it. I hate it. I would like to step into that game as favourites.
And I guess it then comes down to mentality, doesn't it? And sort of dealing with the pressure of all of that will.
Yeah. We accept it, and it's again. You have to be very, very optimistic to say that we are the favourites in the game tomorrow. But does it come with freedom? It's actually a good question. I don't know. Does it? I think some of the ones in there will play for not the first time this season, but some of the ones that will be playing tomorrow has not been in the starting 11 so many times. Some of the ones that will come on have not been playing so many minutes for us. Does it come with a little bit of stress? Probably, yeah. That's realistic. Does it create any pressure or freedom? I don't know. Let's see. I just hope we can go out there and show again what we can do. Hopefully a little bit better than what we did in Sheffield United the other day. Hopefully to have more shots on target. Or at least just to create some bigger chances. Then we definitely have a chance.
Final couple from me, but Daniel Farke, clearly Norwich have faced him a few times now since he left, so that's not a new point. But I was wondering from your perspective, clearly he did or tried to do a very similar thing to what you're doing here in terms of building for long term, lots of young players, trying to play a different brand of football. He was the club's first foreign coach when he arrived at the club. And I was wondering in terms of sort of messaging and getting that message out to your fan base, does the fact that this isn't the first time this club has gone through a process like this, does that almost help you a little bit with fans looking at it?
Yeah, I don't know. I can only see that fans are supporting us. I don't know, was it 2,000 who was in Sheffield United the other day? Is fantastic, and there's support to us also after the game, even though we lost. So I can only see that there's a lot of support, and like I've said a couple of times now, wherever we go, there's much support and a lot of energy and a lot of positive stories also from fans towards us, which is fantastic. And I think also they can see that we are in a situation now where we struggle just a little bit with players available, and I think they can see the same. But I also know that they have expectations, and I also think it's fair that they have those expectations, and we will do everything we can to live up to them. But probably the story with Daniel here is a little bit similar. So that's probably also why I think he's a good coach, and why I think his teams are playing some good football, because it is a little bit similar. There is some similarities in it, and yeah, if the story can be also be similar to that, then it's fine with me.
And actually, my final question was going to be on the fans, the ones travelling to Ellen Road. I mean, we've clearly mapped out why it's going to be a little bit difficult, and where you guys are at. I mean, to have that support constantly in midweek in the Championship, it must give you a massive lift, particularly when you're going into a game like you said, where it's going to be a very difficult task for you guys.
Yeah, I don't think you can underestimate how much it means to a club that you are in a position where there's a lot of support from the fans. I think it's so difficult to work for a player and a coach, and in general just the club, when it's the complete opposite. Then you have to deal with so many negative stories, and you have to deal with so many things that is not in your favor. So what we feel at the moment, and we will make sure that it will continue like that, and that's also probably the reason why I try to be as open and honest as possible, no matter if we win or lose, because we have to keep them on board. We have to keep them as a part of us. We see them as a big part of this club, and we see it down to that we cannot succeed if they're not with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Conor. If we could have the cameras off, please. Phil.